Well, everybody, what's the crack? And welcome back to episode number 18 of the Inline G Flute podcast with me, your host, motherfucking Inline G. Guys, you've seen in the title, you know what's coming up in this episode. But before I let you loose on that interview, let me do a little bit of housekeeping. For 3 months, I've promised you a big guest on this podcast. I promised you a big fish. I said I'd reel one in, and this week I've reeled in a fucking whopper. I've got Shamu on the podcast this week. I am thrilled to announce, ladies and gentlemen, and all in between, that the guest on this week's Inline G Flute podcast is none other than Gary fucking Schocker. Yeah, you heard me right. The flute superstar, Gary Schocker. I've just finished talking with him literally 10 minutes ago. We had a blast. We talked about studies, we talked about balance, we talked about Mozart, we talked about New York in the 70s, we talked about everything. We addressed that Florida issue. We talked about it all. He even played some Beatles for me at the end on his harpsichord. No, I'm not making that up. Go and check out the episode. Now, the episode was recorded virtually, which is a rule I don't do. I don't do online interviews because online interviews, the video gets all pixelated, the audio quality's dog shit. It's awful, and I wouldn't excuse that in this podcast, but I have spent a week working out some new software because this is too big an opportunity to turn down. So the videos were recorded locally, as was the audio. So that means as we did the online interview, they were recorded on your computers at the same time, uploaded to the cloud. I have downloaded those high quality versions, so you get nothing but the fucking best, especially you audio listeners, where it's as crisp as a Belfast Sunday morning in October. So guys, there's the new listeners here, I imagine, because there's a big guest. So quickly, housekeeping. If you go into the description of the podcast, you will find the chapters. You'll find that for all my episodes. I'm Irish. I talk a lot of bollocks sometimes. I waffle on a bit. So if you want to skip to a certain section of the podcast, go into the description and just click that and you go straight there. Secondly, this is an independent podcast. I write, produce, edit. I do the lot all on my own. It's a passion project. I love it to fucking bits. The podcast is free. It will always be free. There will never be a Patreon. You will never get more content for paying for it. Everyone gets the same content no matter what. However, if you fancy donating to the podcast, if you watch this podcast, you think, fuck, that was brilliant, I would buy Gareth a pint if I saw him in the pub, you can do that. In the description of the YouTube video, you'll find a link towards that. In the description of all the videos, you'll find that. You can also, or in Spotify and all, you'll find that there too, but the best place is to go onto my Instagram, Gareth Houston Flute, hit the link in my bio, and there will be a donation page. How much do you donate? I would say whatever a beer or a Dr. Pepper costs in your country, throw that over to me if you feel like donating, if you enjoyed it. I would say no more than once a month. I make 4 episodes a month. You get 4 hours of content. If you can throw me €3 to €4 a month, that helps keep the bills on here. It helps keep it going and allows me to write more episodes and dedicate more time to this podcast. And listen, if you can't afford it, that's fine. It's no problems at all. Everyone gets this. You can listen for free. No sweat at all. But if you can't afford it, brilliant. No sweat. Listen, guys, I've talked enough. I'm going to let you loose. This is my interview with Gary Schocker. I actually do want to start with that though. The idea.
Well, I can talk about how I found you.
Oh, go for that. Yeah. Okay. Please tell me how you found me.
Well, my friend Cindy, my friend and student Cindy, who's been really great because she's been making my website a little bit more user friendly.
Yeah.
It's a very dusty website. I'm very bad at the self promotion stuff, and she said, we really need to do something here. So she's been putting a lot of videos up on Facebook and stuff. Now,
I've seen,
I guess the new big idea is I write a lot of music, and so she's gonna be putting my new stuff up for sale on my website so that somebody can play along with me on the piano and buy the music because my publisher just isn't publishing as much stuff, and so anyway, she's doing all that, and she said, "Oh my God, I heard this guy and." He's really got a potty mouth, but he's really fun.
I do. And that's not a lie.
And she sent me the clip when you were talking with all of those people that were getting their dander up about the Florida the flute list thing, where they people thought I was being discriminated against for being gay and all that stuff. Yeah. So I was very amused by it, and that's why I decided I'd give you a holler.
Well, that's great. I'm glad. First of all, I'm very flattered that it's got to the right places. But yeah, I do want to get on to that Florida thing as well, because that was a thing. Did you ever get to speak about that? I'm sure someone's approached you to talk about this at some point, no?
Well, I have to say that the woman who's I don't know who's president of the thing called me.
Okay.
And she said, I really feel terrible about this because everybody's angry at me, but you should know that there's lots of your pieces on the list. It's not just.
Yeah.
And the reason why they removed the pieces was because they were too difficult. So kids were coming in because they liked the cover.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
They were coming in and playing, and they couldn't play, and they were flunking out.
Yeah.
So they thought, okay, let's slash those pieces from the list. But the language that they used was so inane. I mean, they said that the music wasn't appropriate. And they should have just said, the music is really too difficult, or it's inappropriate for someone at this technical level.
Yeah, there was a bit of elaboration needed in that case, because I do understand the uproar a little bit, given what was going on in Florida. Using the word inappropriate is a little bit vague and could have led people to draw
especially now. I mean, our country is so polarized, and I mean, and it's, you know, it's so scary, like those crazy people, the Republicans right now, they can't even elect an official, and the guy that they've got up there wants to outlaw any mention of anybody who's gay or anything.
I know.
You know, I mean, come on. I mean, it's just so ridiculous. So I can understand why people got upset.
Of course. Yeah, me too. Yeah, I know my reaction was a little bit strong on the whole thing, but it was for comedic effect. Plus, the whole American thing, sometimes yeah, it's no surprise to anyone listening to this podcast.
Well, you know, there's more than one America.
There is.
I live in New York, and it's so different.
Different ballgame.
We lived at the house in Pennsylvania, and we'd go shopping out in Pennsylvania, and everybody was like 5 times the size. Everybody was just huge.
Is Pennsylvania Republican or liberal?
It's both, but where I was, there were a lot of Trump signs.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I was in a college town. I'm from Easton, PA, which is a fairly liberal place. But, you know, I mean, right around Easton, there's some scary places. You know, people who their eyes are very close together. And,
Yeah, to be honest, so obviously I did a bit of homework before this podcast. Not that I needed to do much, because I know a fair bit about you. You're quite a well-known man in the flute world, but the first thing that comes up when you Google someone is obviously where they're from. And you came from Easton, and I'm not super familiar with it, but there was something in my brain that was going, I've heard Easton somewhere. So I went into the Google list of notable people, and I only recognised 2 people. You're not on the list, by the way, which is a disgrace. I will be speaking to Wikipedia about this, but the one I heard was Larry Holmes, the boxer.
Sure,
because he was the Easton assassin. And I had never realised that.
You know, he wanted my dad to teach him, but he wanted my dad to go to his house, and my father had no idea even who he was, and it's like, no, I'm not going to anybody's house to give a lesson.
Like a world champion at that time?
Yeah, it was I guess it was like in the 70s. I think I was in high school, because I think he came and spoke at my high school.
I would imagine so. Like, he was heavyweight champ. He was the only, or the last person to stop Muhammad Ali, like as a stoppage in the fight. Yeah, he was he was a proper champ. So, yeah, I'm a bit familiar with Easton. I know a thing or two. I also found out the only other person I know from Easton is Jack Coleman, who was the senator on the U.S. office.
Oh, yeah, he was my babysitter.
Man, come on. This is ridiculous.
Yeah, Jack Coleman, he was on Dynasty. He was...
That's true, yeah.
And I lived on Parker Avenue, and he lived on Pennsylvania Avenue, which was just like about 4 houses up from me, right behind me. And a couple of times, because he was, you know, he's just like 3 or 4 years older than me, and he came and babysat for us.
That's unbelievable. See... Yeah, you're giving me proper small town America vibes here. That's incredible. Well, yeah, do you know what? Do you mind if I start asking a few questions from that quickly? Because
go ahead.
In my very extensive research, I found some really interesting things. I want to get to your topics very soon, but there's 1 or 2 things I have to ask you because, I dug out some great things. So I was reading about your like early life as a kid, you know, bit of a prodigy, all that kind of stuff. But one thing really stuck out to me is it true that you didn't learn like standard music notation until you were like 11, 12 years old?
Yeah, it's true. Well, you know, when I was a kid, my father was a music teacher, and I mean, very much loved in the community and just taught everybody. And he had his studio. My bedroom shared a wall with his studio, so I heard music all the time. And my father kind of, you know, I loved my father, you know, the end of the earth, but he shoved it down my throat. He drove me crazy. We'd be in the car, and he'd be saying, okay, Gary, how many Haydn string quartets are there? And I was like, I don't know.
Do you know now?
You know, well, no.
Yeah.
And he kind of put me off all kinds of pedagogy. Maybe he did me a big favor, because just every day was a piano lesson. It was like, okay, let's do the Liszt chromatic fingering. Now let's do the French chromatic fingering. Now what's the German chromatic fingering? And it's like, I just want to do it my way, please.
Yeah.
But, I had to listen to him because he was my dad.
Yeah.
But, I really couldn't read. And he kept trying to teach me because I played before I was 3, I was playing the piano.
That's incredible as well.
And, well, it was just there, I think when I was about 11, he took the Haydn Serenade and he put the music in front of me and he said, look at the music. I said, I don't need to look at the music. I know it. And he said, yeah, but just look at the music and play it. And suddenly I could read music because I did it backwards. So I always tell people you should always start without the notes because, if you've got an ear, you can figure it out. If you don't have an ear, you should probably do something else, right?
Yeah, that's okay. That's a very wise point, yeah. But then you did compositions when you were 5, 6, 7. So was someone else notating it for you? You got the idea, and your dad would
my dad, yeah, my dad did, and I was I think in 2nd grade or something, and I wrote this little piece and my lollipop waltz.
I know, yeah, I've got it written down here. I've got that in my research.
And I got to find that music somewhere.
I was going to ask you. You don't have the sheet music anymore?
I probably do. I'm actually, I'm giving all of my music to the University of California at Santa Barbara.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, well, it's kind of a strange story, but years ago, I was on the internet and I saw where there was a letter that I wrote Sam Sanders that was in the Juilliard Library. So I called up the Juilliard Library and I said, hey, do you have an interest in my scores? And they said, oh, absolutely. So they sent a truck and I gave them like 8 big boxes of scores, and then they put them all in acid-free paper and packed them away and everything. And then I called them like, I don't know, 5 years ago, and I said, hey, I've got a lot more scores. Do you want them? And they said, well, we don't have any room. And we're using a storage facility in New Jersey. And so we can't take any more. And I said, well, can you give me mine back? Because I don't want them in 2 places, Yeah. So they said, no, we can't do that. But then they called me back and they said, okay, we'll send them back. So my husband has maybe the largest Broadway, musical archive in the world.
Yeah, he wrote a book on it as well, didn't he?
Yeah, he wrote it. He wrote the Oxford Chronology of American Musical Theater, and it's in all the libraries.
Yeah.
So anyway, he is giving all of his stuff to this library. So the librarian was here meeting with him once, and I said, hey, what am I going to do with all these scores? And she said, well, we'll take them.
Okay.
So it's kind of nice. I'm going to go out there and do a concert in early February. And
so when you say scores, are these original manuscripts as well? Then the originals?
Yeah, on my pencil, because I never learned how to do it on the computer. I'm kind of I'm one of those people that just does it the old-fashioned way.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. To be fair, there's a lot to be said for that. So are they getting the original manuscripts in your handwriting then?
Yeah. Do you write as well?
No, I do a bit of arranging, but I'm a big fan of the computer.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, you're younger than I am, so you kind of grew up with it more. And I started out. And the thing is, when I first started to compose, really the most I wrote was when I was in high school. I wrote some musicals, and I drove those poor kids crazy because I.
Right? Can I ask on this? So I found this out in the research as well. I've really done my homework here. I found out in my research. So when you were before you started using normal notation or standard notation, you had written 2 musicals already. What were they? Can you remember what they were and what the themes were?
Oh, yeah, sure. Well, my next door neighbor, who was a friend of the family and also an English teacher called Janet Heller, very much loved person in the school, and she was very naughty. I mean, I remember once there was my devil fell over. Got to get the devil, right? So I remember there was a teacher strike at the high school, and her husband was kind of a crazy guy, and you'll like this. And he made a penis cookie cutter. Okay. And then she painted the names of all of the school board members on these, and she was passing them out to the strikers,
That's rock and roll as fuck. I love that.
Yeah. And anyway, they were a very colorful, salty kind of couple. But anyway, we wrote these musicals. The first one was called Paragon, and it was actually about the illegitimate daughter of Clark Kent and Lois Lane.
No way.
Yeah. And
that's fucking class. Hang on, did you have an interest in comic books when you were younger, or?
No, not at all. I think she came up with the idea, and it was a really fun show. It was a way to involve lots. I mean, there were 80 people on the stage, so high school.
Is there recording? Is there any evidence of this? Or
I have an LP that we had pressed.
No way. Is it available for purchase, or have you just kept it in your own private vault?
I just have it. I should probably I think I did transfer it to CD. If somebody wants it, I'd be happy to share.
I want that. Yeah, I want that.
There's some very good songs, and actually, I stole some of the music from that. I'm trying to think which it was. I think the slow movement of Musique Française came from.
Yeah.
Something came from one of my more famous pieces came from that show.
Ooh, maybe don't tell me, and I guess.
I know it's the slow movement of my second piccolo sonata came from that. It's called One Lovebird, and it's based on a song called I've Lost Him.
Okay. And what was the other musical then? What was
the other one was called Busybodies, and that was about a class trip to London.
Cool. Based on real events or purely fictional?
No, I didn't go, but Janet used to run these tours. You know how they have these tours where they take a bunch of kids over and they have a chaperone, and she was always a chaperone.
Yeah.
So I can't remember the plot. I just remember there were some good songs in that show.
Cool. Well, there you are. And they were done without standard notation then. So how did you teach the singers what the words were and stuff?
I just did. They did it by ear. So
you would just sing the tune to them, and they would all take it home.
Yeah, and I would write down the melody. I didn't write out the score, but I was able to write out the melody. But, a lot of these kids didn't read music anyway. They were just as dumb as I was. So
I don't know if it's dumb to have an entire musical knocking about your head that you can just share with people. It's pretty impressive.
Well, I one thing about me, I write really fast.
I was actually going to ask you about this, yeah.
I wrote these shows, each of them, one took 4 days and one took a week or something.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm just very fast. It's just the way I am, and I've tried to slow down. Actually, when I first started, when I started writing in my 20s, I decided, well, I have to write more serious music. So I would take a piece, and then I'd take it apart, and I'd try to make it longer.
Yes. The true artist,
the whole thing up and end up with a piece of, as you might say, shite.
Yeah.
It just doesn't suit me. It's not the way I write.
Do you know what? I was dying to ask you about that as well, because, you have this new piece that you sent me a recording of, Tang. First of all, what is the name on that? Is it tang as in the English word for something to be tangy, or I'm assuming it's a lot more exotic and interesting than that?
No, it's a tango.
Okay.
And also, it's based on a piece I wrote that somebody asked me for called Octango, which was a tango I wrote in October for piano. And so I didn't realize at the time, but I started writing this, and somebody had just asked me for that, and I sent it to her. And I had that music, I guess, in my head, because after I wrote this, I realized, I took the same kind of structure and put that together.
There must be a lot of overlap, surely, with your compositions. When you're composing that much stuff, there must be subconscious overlap even. Do you ever look back at stuff and go, oh, look who's popped back to the party after all these years?
Well, I get frustrated because I hate repeating myself, but there's some patterns that I just really cannot seem to get away from. And so when they come up, I just say, okay, fine, write it. And then usually the next thing will be something different. But it's almost like finding my footing with an old rhythm or something that I like.
So using that new piece as an example, what was the time scale for that from first idea conception to having it recorded?
I wrote it in a day.
Oh, fuck up.
I write, it doesn't take long when you're doing it right. Here's what writing is. I get an idea, and I can tell that it's a good idea. And if I know it's not a good idea and I try to write it, it's just kind of a waste of everybody's time. So I start, and then I can just kind of tell because it'll shift somewhere I didn't expect. And as soon as that happens, I know, okay, this is something I should do. And then it pretty much just, I just do it. Let me see if I've got that here somewhere.
So when you're doing it, are you in this kind of intense state of concentration, creative flow, you're just head down for a couple of hours and you don't do anything else? Or is it kind of casual?
It's kind of like, I don't know where I put it. Darn, it's here somewhere. But I mean, I could show you my sketch, but pretty much, here's another piece I just wrote. What is this? Here's a piece called Moonrise that I wrote on 9/27. So here's the finished score.
Yeah.
And if I show you the worksheet, because I keep them, it's not that different. You don't see lots of stuff crossed out. It's more like I just do like
beautiful handwriting as well.
Well, thanks. It used to be better when I was younger, because I think my eyes were more, young.
Yeah. But that's incredible that you can write a piece in a day and have it going.
Yeah. I know that's kind of my thing. I tend to write really fast, and it's just, I don't know. It's just how I am.
So when you're writing, what's the rough percentage of the amount of these pieces that will get published or get printed in some kind of form compared to ones that just get locked away?
Well, my friend Jenny has been getting all my music ready for the University of California, Santa Barbara. So she's been going through all my... Yeah, she's just been going through all the piles of stuff that I have here that weren't already cataloged. And she estimates there's around 1,600 pieces.
What the...
So, and I currently have about 300 pieces published. So it's it's a little less than a fifth of what I've written.
And then the published pieces, do you ever perform any pieces that aren't published?
Not really. I don't get that many performances, I'm not, I might play something when I go out to California that's new. That's probably a good idea. But, no, I generally play stuff that's already published, because then if somebody wants to play it, they can.
That was, But that's, it just, when I was making notes on this, the first thing that came into my mind when I was thinking about your massive output was, it feels a bit like Prince.
Wait a second, did you say you're a massive armpit?
Output, sorry, that's my accent.
Okay.
But listen, I can't soften my accent, because I was home in Belfast 2 weeks ago, and I had a few people saying, we really like the podcast, but why are you talking with that fucking accent? And I was like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, but I have to enunciate for the Americans. And then I run back into my normal accent, and people think I'm saying that they've got massive armpits, which is the last thing I want to be known for. But with regards to your massive output,
I've actually heard your armpits are really charming.
Thank you very much. Yeah, you're not the first person to say that, Gary. It's been said before. It's well known, in fact. Oh God, how do we get here? I've got a gin and tonic as well, so things are getting...
Oh wow, good.
Normally I have a drink on the podcast with it, and then 1 out of 5 now will be an alcoholic drink. The rest of the time will be like a soda or sparkling water. But I thought tonight I'll get a canned gin and tonic for the special occasion. Plus, where you are, it's like 3 p.m, but over here it's 9:30 at night. So any excuse. But anyway, back to the armpit. With your output, it immediately made me think of Prince. Now, I'm not comparing your composition ability to Prince in any way. But what I'm saying is, when Prince died, we all found out that there was this huge vault of music that was never recorded or documented. Or is it going to be the same with you? Or is there a huge vault somewhere of Gary Schocker music that we're never going to get to hear?
Well, I've got it all here, and it's all going to California, whether people play it or not.
So when it goes to California, it will be available to pick up. People could go.
Yeah, people will be able to. I'm just signing the thing with them that basically says if somebody wants a copy of something, they can get it.
That's a relief, because I would hate to know that there was all this music that just sat there
moldering.
Because there might be like a gem in there that you haven't appreciated. There might be your finest work yet. Your chef d'oeuvre might be in there.
Well, I have like 6 piano sonatas that nobody knows, and I have all kinds of stuff. I have a couple of cello sonatas that nobody knows, and so it is kind of all sitting there, and it'd be nice to, The thing is, when I write music, I always have to refine it when I hear it.
Okay.
Even if I write a piece and I record the piano part and play the flute part, I'll make certain changes.
Okay.
But when I play with another person, it changes, because my way of thinking, my way of articulating, for example, with flute, all that, or my way of pedaling with the piano is not anybody else's way.
Okay.
So I have to hear other people in order to make something more clear.
Okay.
So
So to do revisions on the score as well, then.
Yeah, before I publish it, I always go through a process with it, and
Okay.
then when I've published a lot of stuff with Theodore Presser, and a lot of times there's a back and forth there with the editor. They don't like my spelling,
Okay.
my sharp should be flats and so forth and so on.
Your
So they'll
spelling? What
make,
issues do they have with your
well,
spelling?
like if I have an A natural, we'll say no, it really should be a B double flat or something like that.
Ah,
So
okay. Your notational spelling then, not.
yeah, and sometimes I say fine, and sometimes I say no, leave it alone, it's fine.
Okay.
But
Okay. Okay.
it's always good to have, I have Danny Dorff is the editor there, and he's a composer, and he's got very good.
Okay.
He's helped me clear some things up like that.
Okay, well that makes it feel a little bit more human then, because in my head then you were throwing out a piece in the day and it was on the shelves the next morning, ready to rock. So
Well, I've done that a few times, but
not really.
More often than not.
Have you ever actually
really
composed and had something ready the next day, like published or available to purchase maybe, or pre-order?
Sure. A lot of my stuff. I've kind of changed from. I used to just write them and then just send them, and then I thought, just I need to live with it a little bit more
Okay.
to know what it is.
Okay.
Even something like a metronome marking is gonna. I mean, one thing about me is I never ever use a metronome. I don't like them. I think
Okay.
they make people dead. They're good to check a tempo.
Yeah.
So, and I know what they are. If somebody plays 96, I know it's 96.
Really, you could,
But-
but can you know exactly what it is? Are you one of those people that knows like?
Usually, I'm pretty
Yeah.
close if I'm not exactly right. And I also have really annoyingly perfect pitch.
I
So
read
that-
this. Yeah. Quick question actually, because I've asked people with perfect pitch about this, and I never get a clear answer. But someone of your level might know. When you have perfect pitch, is that even temperament or is that true intonation? So when you hear, like, I don't know, a major third, do you hear it as if it's played the piano, or can you hear a true major third, or do you have both? Can you identify both separately?
I just hear a major third. I never really thought about it. I mean, if two flutes play a B and an E, it's going to sound like a B and E and an E the same way it would on an accordion or a piano.
Yeah, because there is a very very mild difference, but I'm always curious if that can be picked up or.
I never thought about that before, but
Okay.
I'll tell you. I literally, if somebody. There's a funny joke about Jesse Norman in this, but if somebody sits down on the piano, I can tell you what the notes are. But when I try to play in an orchestra, it's murder because I get very confused when other people do funny things. Like if somebody's sharp and somebody's flat, it's hard for me to discern that because I think I'm more focused on the
true
pitch
pitch, yeah.
than, yeah.
Yeah, because I've heard that story a few times as well. A common story of touring orchestras when they go on tour across Europe, especially. Obviously, in Britain it's the 4/4 for A, but in Germany it's 4/4 or 4/4. And when they tour and they're playing piano concertos, it can always be a bit of a hairy moment when the piano comes in if there's a big tutti at the start, because it might just be a little bit in or out. And I imagine for someone with perfect pitch that would be a nightmare to play the different pianos, for example.
I had a terrible experience way back in the 80s. I had a tour with the Westdeutsche Sinfonien or something like that. And the woman that was running the thing, she was British, was just an amazingly mean person.
Oh, that's the British for you, yeah.
And I think she was angry because when I was with an agent called Harold Shaw, who's very big, he managed, like everybody, Milstein, Jesse Norman, you name it, they were there. And they had the option of having me as the flute soloist playing Mozart or having her boyfriend, who was the conductor, playing Mozart piano concerto. And every single person chose me.
Yeah.
So they were getting less money and less attention. And so she just hated me from the very beginning. Yeah. And they refused to lower their pitch. And, I've always played on old flutes. My flutes are from the 1920s and the 50s. They wanted me to play 443, so it screwed me up.
Yeah, that's high as shit for one of those old flutes.
Absolutely. I mean, it's easy for an open C sharp, but for the rest of the notes, forget it.
Yeah, it'd be crazy, yeah. I'm always fascinated about that, yeah, with perfect pitch. It's a very fascinating concept. I have nowhere near it.
Really?
Yeah, if you give me a C, I could probably give you a D flat out of it on a good day, or a B natural, but I'd struggle to get bang on.
I think part of it is like, you know, maybe pay attention next time somebody does it, because if you get stiff in your body, then you're not going to be able to tell.
Well,
so
actually,
maybe
this
if you had a couple of gin and tonics and somebody asked you, maybe you could do it.
No, things go downhill, Emily. But yeah, with my pitch, things generally go downhill. But that's a beautiful segue into one of the topics you wanted to talk about. Did you want to talk about like relaxation and balance, especially, and things like that with the flute?
Sure.
Let's go with that. Let's take that natural turn that way.
Okay, good. Well, when I got into my early 30s, I started to have really bad lower back problems. Like I couldn't get out of bed. So someone I knew said, "Oh, you should go take some Alexander technique lessons." And I thought, "Okay, I will." And I did. And within months, everything was way better. My back was still bothering me occasionally, but never debilitating.
Okay.
And it made me start paying attention to my playing in a different way, because I was always the kind of player who just played. I did not want to be told.
You strike me as that type, yeah.
But now when I perform, I let go. But when I practice every day, I look at everything that I'm doing, not in terms of planning how I'm going to play it, but what's going on with your left ankle? Why is it so much tighter than your right ankle? What does that have to do with your thumb? You know, what are you doing? I'm always looking for new ways to understand my technique. And so when I teach, I've gotten really good at it. I mean, literally, I can close my eyes and I can tell you where you're tight.
Wow. Okay.
Because I've done it.
From the flute sound, you mean? From the sound of the flute, you know where the
sure. Yeah, because I've done it myself, so I know I know what makes that sound. So I'm able to figure out what's up with somebody's tongue or with their, you know, most of the problems are in their hands.
Yeah.
Yeah, they get very fixated on their mouth.
I would, yeah.
This is just a whole. I mean, it's really more about the whole mask, like what's going on up here, and also just learning that the tongue isn't really supposed to be pushing the sound. It's only to stop the sound. So you want your tongue to be like a big floppy sponge. Okay. And also when you do use your tongue, I mean, when you do use your tongue to change color, that you don't bring anything along with it.
I'm very interested about that as well. I've had a lot of issues with my tongue because I have like this very I wouldn't say a lisp, but I have like a slightly odd thing on my tongue. And I didn't realise it until I went to study in Paris, and a few teachers had brought it up, and they were like, you might need to get that seen too. And I remember I went to a speech therapist in Paris, and she was saying like, because I had to do it in French, which was even more difficult. It's like, it's very odd that you've got to this age and nobody's mentioned this and blah 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 and what's going on. So where are you from? You're not French? And I went, no, I'm from Ireland. And she went, oh, that explains it. And that was it. It's gone, oh, does it? No. So apparently, we learn. It's like a learned habit. It's not a physical thing. It's a learned habit of not pronunciating properly. But when I play the flute, I would use a different T articulation to what I would use in my speech, because I know my speech one is very, like, I use the center of the tongue as the point of the T. So I'm always fascinated by hearing about the tongue and what people think about it and where it should lie in the mouth and the role it plays, because it's something I think about a lot.
Well, my feeling is that the tongue has to always go back to its very relaxed state. So if you use the tongue for color, you need to, or I need to, always let it calm down. Okay. Otherwise, you know, and also if you're trying, most people when they want to sound like they're playing cleanly, they try to play like this. Yeah. Which just locks everything up in the neck and the face. So when I tongue, it's much more like, it's much more like there's a lot of air around what I'm doing, and I'm trying to just keep the tongue from choking my throat. Yeah. Do you think that's because of that natural association in the head of just precision is linked with tightness? So we naturally think, if I want to be precise, I need to go that way, and to be relaxed is lazy almost. Yeah. Well, it certainly isn't lazy, because there's an awful lot of mental activity, of course, that I've got going on when I'm playing, because I have to kind of watch what I'm doing. It's kind of like watching somebody ice skate, but at the same time you're you're kind of with them, and you're kind of watching them, but you want them to be able to go, and so it's always so tricky because it can never be perfect. It's always something that isn't quite where I want it.
See, I feel like that's one of the way I try to describe technique to my students as well, is that it's always a train that's kind of slightly going off the tracks. Always during performance, you're always going one way or another. You're constantly making small adjustments. It never just goes. You never just go and play the flute and go, that's it. It's brilliant, perfect, happy days. It's always going this way. And the real skill is learning how to put it back on track quickly and efficiently without really disrupting things too much. And the better you get at it, the less noticeable it becomes as well.
It sounds like you're a good teacher.
Oh, well, I might say some people say that. I don't know. Some people say that, but some people say I'm the finest teacher of a generation. But I don't know, Gary. That's for other people to say that. I wouldn't say something like that myself. That's an absolute lie. But balance. So when you were talking about balance earlier, what did you mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, with the flute, I feel like it's like the arms kind of come out of the back, out of the spine, and the spine has to feel free and also be used in one piece. And people tend to break the spine either by pushing down with the ribs, which also, listen to what that does to my throat, or they pull up like this, and then they're very tight in the low back, so they don't have a good connection to the diaphragm. So there are all kinds of funny things people do because they think that they need to do something right. When mostly my experience is I listen, and when it's great, I say, okay, what are you doing? What's different? And then I immediately do it my habitual way to see what the difference is between that and what I've just done. A lot of people are afraid to do that because they think, once they've found the El Dorado, they don't want to go back to New Jersey. But you have to you have to really be willing to play it the wrong way after you've played it the right way. That's the best way to learn.
That's very interesting. See, I feel like that makes a lot of sense naturally, but the problem is, like, that's viewed almost from a scientific point of view, where it makes total sense. If you're doing it wrong, you look at what was right, etc., etc. You analyze all the variables and you get a result. But obviously, when we're practicing our instruments, emotion plays a huge part. Frustration, excitement, and that, for me, tends to throw everything out the window. Then you don't think rationally. You don't think of going, oh well, I'll just do this.
Well, when you're practicing, you can just, I'm not really talking about performing so much, but more when I'm practicing, I'm always just in my little laboratory trying to figure out, and I keep notes. I fill up a legal pad once a month with whatever I've discovered practicing, what I observe about my students, and I never look at them again, but I do feel like writing it down helps me remember it.
Have you
and I think that's a really good idea for people to write stuff down.
Yeah, what about recordings? Do you record yourself as well for practice purposes?
No, but I record all the time because I'm always posting my new stuff that I write. So that's been really good for me. My friend David Williams he's a flute maker. He now kind of runs the show at Powell. I think he's the head of it there. And he is a big recording guy, and he was always saying, you really need to record more, and you need to, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. But I started, I guess, mostly during the pandemic, just because, and I've made at least a couple hundred recordings, and he loves to tinker with video, so I send him the recording, and then he kind of puts it together so it looks nice.
But you wouldn't do that for practice purposes then, though?
No, I think people overuse like if I see somebody and they come in with one of those tuners and they put it on their stand, they've got their metronome and it goes on their stand, it's like, could you just play Mary Had a Little Lamb for me and put all that away for a while? Let's see how you do what you do, rather than using these tools that you feel you need to prop yourself up so that you can play it.
Yeah, I almost get secondhand anxiety off students when they do that kind of thing, because I can tell that that's not something they do to get better. It's a safety net, or it gives them a sense of comfort, but it's an anxious response usually of, if I don't have this, I'm fucked, as opposed to, having this makes me better, and then I get anxious off them. Like, well, what happens if it runs out of batteries? Are you going to be panicked then?
Well, I agree. I feel the same way. It makes me uncomfortable, and I think that it makes people play worse because there's a kind of a set that you do with your body when you're checking to see whether you're right about something.
Yeah.
And playing shouldn't be that. Playing should be like free fall, swimming, flying.
It should be, yeah. It definitely should be. Right, well, I want to go into another thing you talked about because you caught my attention right at the start here when you said this before we recorded. Studies. You think they don't do anything?
Yeah, I mean, the thing about studies is if it's good music, like the Castered études are gorgeous.
Yeah.
Something like that, sure. If you want to play them because they're hard. But even those, the guy didn't play the flute.
Yeah.
And some of the stuff is just plainly not really great for the flute. But
yeah.
I don't know, flute players have this thing that I do not understand because I always want to play stuff that feels good.
Yeah,
like
naturally, yeah.
I do not understand the fascination with Kargelert. I do not understand the fascination with somebody who tells you to plunge down and play something triple forte because you can't do that.
Yeah.
On a beautiful old flute. They weren't designed for that. You can't do that on the Louis lot.
No, you definitely couldn't. No.
And I just don't understand why flute players seem to like music that's really difficult because then they can show. Maybe it's that. Maybe, and I'm not speaking about anybody in particular. My mind's just going here, but maybe flute players can be limited by their repertoire.
Oh God, yeah.
Speaking as a pianist, I got how many gorgeous Mozart sonatas I can play any day, Beethoven sonatas. Flute players have just a fraction of stuff that's okay.
Okay.
Even the Mozart that the flute players have,
it's not great.
It's great, but it's not as great.
Yeah, it's not one of Mozart's greatest works at all.
Yeah, and so it's frustrating that people, so I think maybe it tends to make people feel like they need to conquer new territory or something, so they just want stuff they can stomp all over. Or, how fast can you play this? Can you play the Prelude to the Afternoon of Faune in one
breath? I don't
breath?
get fucking started on that.
Well, let me just start on that because I'm going to show you. If you take that over, I'm going to take it over to my
Go for it.
Try not to trip.
Oh, that'd be good content though. I get a lot of views if you did.
Really? So if I do, if you put your, I'm going to show you my hand. Okay. Yeah. See, watch my hand. See how it drops? So flute players do this.
Yeah.
It's all about this note.
Yeah.
Then here, that's new. So there are plenty of places where that could breathe, right?
Of course, yeah.
But people get it in their heads that it's only good if you can do it in one breath.
I've never understood that.
I just find that so silly myself, but anyway, so I think flute players, because of there's not a whole lot of great music, and then I don't know. I also have this theory that the flute is just so easy to get to be a B+ on.
Yeah, okay, that's fair enough.
Compared to the cello or the violin,
yeah.
Even to get to be a D on the violin, it's not that many people, Yeah. Flute players, almost anybody that picks it up,
you
they're
can
going
be
to be able to play.
You can be fine, yeah.
And so I think flute players often, I'm speaking of people I teach, they kind of plateau out and then they start to have problems because they don't know how to get past there. And so then they start to push. And once they start to push, they start to have arm problems or, they
So do you think the
calm
secret maybe lies in just changing up the repertoire or looking at new ideas of what to play?
I think that the repertoire has a lot to do with it. I think that if my advice to people is seriously just be able to play Jingle Bells with the most gorgeous sound that you've ever heard, and then you can pretty much play anything. But if you're always playing stuff with an okay sound, you're never going to really be happy with your playing. Because I'm all about tone myself.
I know you are, yeah.
It has to sound magical. It has to sound like it's just something happening all by itself. To me, I don't like flutes that sound sweaty.
Sweaty? What do you mean sweaty? Like as if there's effort attached to it?
Yeah, like somebody's just working really hard, and you watch them, and there's all these gesticulating, and now we've got people that dance while they're playing, and all this stuff. It's like, I don't know. I find it's just hard enough for me to stand there and leave myself alone and let it out. It takes a lot of focus. Because, out
of curiosity, do you have any? I'm not even speaking of current flute players, but do you have any flute players from history in general that you particularly like?
Sure.
Who are your favorites?
I guess my favorites are my teacher Julius Baker.
Yeah, I would have guessed that. Yeah.
Love Rumpal.
Yeah. Okay.
And I love Elaine Schaefer. Do you know her playing?
Do you know my teacher at Royal Welsh used to show me a lot of her, or give me recordings of her playing, but I can't remember.
Listen to the slow movements of the Bach sonatas. They're just unearthly. They're gorgeous.
See, I need to.
The woman.
What kind of era was she, and where is she from, etc.?
I think she died in the 70s.
Yeah.
I think her big time was in the 50s and 60s.
Like really, yeah, because I remember the recordings not being amazing quality, obviously, but yeah. My old teacher at Royal Welsh used to show me a lot of this stuff. One player I became very attached to as well was Thomas Nyfinger as well. That was a player that I got really familiar with.
He was a very good player. He was a kind of a destructive person.
Oh really? Okay.
I played I guess when I was like 15 I went to Julius Baker's master class, and I guess I played, and Tom Nyfinger apparently came up to me afterwards, because years later I met him and he said, "You just blew me off. You didn't even want to talk to me." It's like, well, I was like 15, so what is your problem? You 45-year-old crazy person. And it actually did turn out he did have a lot of mental problems, but I went to him when I had some problems when I came to Juilliard. I was 17. I moved to New York City, and Julius Baker was like not teaching me. He just didn't tell you how to do anything. And once I got to Juilliard, he would show up late for lessons and sit there and eat his chicken and read his paper. And mostly my lessons were about, like the Israeli Philharmonic players would come in and he'd go, "You got to listen to this kid." And then I'd have to play. And that was my lesson.
Okay.
And so I really needed help because I was struggling a lot with my identity. I knew I was gay, but I hadn't been out to my parents or anything. And so I did this competition, and I didn't win first prize. I won third prize. Okay. And he said, "Oh, it's because your pianist is a fag."
Whoa.
And so I called him the next day, and I said, "Look, and after that, I just wasn't comfortable because my own self-confidence wasn't good in that department. And also because he clearly had a shtick with gay people."
Oh my God, yeah. Well, yeah, what years were you in Juilliard?
77 to 81.
Yeah, so, like, I'm just running off the top of my head here, but wasn't that the time in New York where you would have had, like, the disco scene sort of exploding as well, Studio 54, all that kind of stuff?
I used to go to Studio 54.
Okay, wow.
I traveled with a very, I met someone, and he was friends with all these people from Caracas that were just like Rolls Roycing.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was never into cocaine and all that stuff, but that was all going on. I remember once we went to Studio 54 on New Year's Eve, and as we walked out, they filled the hallway with glitter, like up to your knees.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So you had to walk through all this glitter, and it was pretty glamorous for, like a 19-year-old.
Yeah, well, like, I can only imagine, like, at that age, moving to New York, coming from a small town, going there, and also New York at the time obviously had disco, but you had, like, the punk rock scene with the Ramones sort of kick off, and hip-hop was in its early days. There must have been a lot going on in the city. Did you get a chance to, like, get involved or to get to see other music, or were you purely just, like, stuck in Juilliard, working there all the time?
Well, I mean, I was always very focused on myself, but I did go to clubs, so
Okay.
I did hear some of the new stuff. And I don't really know much about that music. I just know what I like.
Okay, what do you like? Can you give us a few?
Hold on a second. Somebody's trying to call me. I gotta turn this off.
Oh, I thought that was your actual door.
No, it's my phone ring.
I was hoping it was going to be someone famous. We're going to have an extra guest on the podcast.
Well,
what's your? Can I ask you, like, what would be your guilty pleasure music?
Let's see.
Because I know you listen to jazz and you're very sophisticated. You've got a great taste in music. But what do you listen to when no one's looking? What pop music do you like?
I'm embarrassed to say that I just don't pay attention to it very much. I used to when I was when I was in my 20s and I was going out to bars and clubs and stuff. I heard it all, and I like a lot of those songs a lot. All disco songs.
Oh, I love disco.
You do?
Oh, I'm a big disco man. Yeah, I'm a big disco fan.
Yeah, I mean, I remember all those Rod Stewart songs and all that stuff, and I liked it a lot. But I don't really know now. It's all just like.
Well, I'll give you this one then. If you went to karaoke and you had to sing a karaoke song, what would be your song? You strike me as a bit of a Frank Sinatra man. Would that be fair to say? Would you do a bit of Sinatra?
No, it would. Oh, not a disco song. You mean like any song?
Any song, any karaoke song.
God, you asked.
Have you sang karaoke before? Have you ever sang karaoke?
No, I've never done it. No.
Oh well, there's one for.
I don't know, maybe Moon River.
Good one. Okay, classic.
I love that song. It's a beautiful song.
That's a gorgeous song.
The lyric is so evocative, and it's just such a moving song.
Yeah, that's a good one.
It's greater than the sum of its parts.
True, yeah. Okay, that's a good answer. That's good. You get it right with that one.
And it's visual. You can just kind of see it when you listen to it. So I love that. I love Love is Blue.
Love is a blue?
Love is Blue.
Love is Blue? I don't know that.
It goes like this. Wait.
Oh, do you know what already? Can you take requests?
Yes, blue. Wait. Blue, my love is blue. Blue is my love. Da 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 da.
Oh no,
but listen to it. It's really.
Yeah, wait. Yeah, it's got that lovely cabaret kind of vibe to it.
But it's very Baroque. I'm listening. I'll do it for you on a more appropriate instrument.
Oh, please do. Yeah.
I love that.
Oh, you hear? Me too. We can cancel the podcast if you want. You could be like a jukebox in the corner. I can just give you songs to play. This is fucking great. I'm having a gin and tonic, listen to a bit of harpsichord. This is great.
Yeah, well, I do love that music from the 60s, from when I was a little boy.
Yeah. Did you get any of that? So one thing I always find fascinating is what kind of music taste you might have got off people around you, sort of through secondhand.
Well, my brother didn't get classical music at all, and he loved Led Zeppelin, and he was a big Beatles fan, and all that kind of music.
I would have thought you would have been attracted. I would have thought you had a Beatles. No?
I love the Beatles.
Yeah.
I think they're gorgeous. I mean, the Beatles also, it's so much based on old music.
Yeah,
on
it is. Yeah,
Italian art song and
hugely. Yeah, I'm a massive Beatles fan, so yeah, I would have. Yeah, I feel like a lot of musicians are big fans of the Beatles. You can always sort of track it back to the Beatles at some point.
Well, when you think about a song like
oh, please play me some Beatles. This is great.
Some, wait, see. So listen, wait. of
it's gorgeous.
a little Baroque thing, right?
Well, to be fair, I've always had this thing in my head of I would compare the Beatles slightly to Mozart.
Yeah, and Bach.
Yeah.
Because there's a Baroque. What's that one? What's one of their other slow songs? Like
Let It Be
one?
would be the most famous, maybe. Long and Winding Road.
There's
Here Comes the Sun. It's a George Harrison one.
But they all kind of have a classical bent.
Oh yeah, hugely. Yeah, there's one with the harpsichord solo, isn't it? Pieces. There's one that has a harpsichord solo in it.
Okay, well, I mean, just the chord patterns are interesting.
They're beautiful. Yeah.
I mean, it feels like, I live in Harlem, and every once in a while, somebody just has to put down the windows of their car and put their stereo system as loud as it can possibly go and park in front of my house.
What do they
play? And it's mostly...
What do you get?
It's hip-hop. It's like loud and hip-hop, and it's like this beat, and I just... That's kind of replaced the chord changes, which I find a little bit sad.
Yeah. I don't know if I'd find it sad. I'm a big hip-hop man as well, but... Yeah, I'm a big everything.
Well, I miss hearing the melodies. I miss hearing the chords.
Yeah, to be fair, that's probably the biggest attraction of the Beatles as well, is those beautiful melodies, and that's very evident in your writing as well. So
thank you.
Yeah, well, it's always very melodic. I know, like to me, I think I read somewhere in one of the interviews you did that you didn't like being compared to a certain French composer. I can't remember which one. I think somebody compared you to Faune or Poulenc. Yeah.
I'm a little Poulenc-ish.
But to be fair, that's a good thing in my book. I am a massive fan of Poulenc.
I think all artists want to, everybody. I think people want to feel that they're unique, and so when you compare them, but it's kind of how else are you going to put something in perspective?
Yeah, naturally. Well, Gary, listen, we haven't got much time left, but do you mind if I ask you a couple of quick fire questions?
Sure.
I have some quickfire ones. I don't know if you're familiar with Inside the Actor's Studio, but they have a set of 10 questions for artists. So I'm going to give you a couple of quickfire questions. Not too quickfire. We've got 10 minutes here. Not rush. But I'll run through them. Let's see what you think. So, question number 1. What is your favourite word? You can go any language if you want.
Love.
Good answer. What is your least favorite word?
Trump.
Oh, I thought you were going to say hate there as well, but that's even better. What turns you on creatively?
I don't know. I guess it's... You mean what happens?
No, what gets you going creatively? What sort of sparks that creative fuse?
Frustration.
Ooh, very poetic. What turns you off creatively? What kills the creativity?
Fatigue.
What sound or noise do you love? I was looking forward to this one.
Rain.
Good one. What sound or noise do you hate?
Hate. I don't.
Nails on a blackboard or anything like that?
A screeching noise, like if the subway's screeching, and I hate that.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of it.
I hate it if somebody scrapes a pot with a fork.
That's a horrible one. Yeah, I did that today myself. I did that about an hour ago. Fuck. Okay, 2 left. You don't have to answer this one if you don't want to, but what is your favourite curse word?
Curse word?
Your favourite.
Oh no, I can't say that because people are going to get really offended.
Is it a bad one?
No,
because I've already got to bleep out one word in this episode. So
it's just like, I mean, see, I don't tend to swear when I'm angry. Do you mean just like as a word or a word that I don't use?
Either. Like my favorite is shite. I think it's a beautiful word because it's not too harsh, it's not too offensive, but it's poetic and it's got a very distinct description. So, yeah.
Well, I would say that shit is probably the word that I can feel
attached
here
to.
when I
Yeah,
say it. It's like,
yeah,
shit.
yeah.
But often the only problem with shit with me, it can also mean that I've made a mistake. It's like shit. Because you can also pull the I right down into your lower spine.
You can.
You know that?
But you never have like a good like shit. Yeah. You wouldn't get one of them.
No, I'm not one of those.
Okay then. Well, it can still be your favourite for that reason. And the last question, what profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Writing.
Really? Like as an author?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There you are. I did not expect. I don't know what I expected, but didn't expect that. Well,
I mean, I like doing other things. I'm really good at putting furniture and paintings and stuff.
I hear you're quite a handy gardener as well. You've got green fingers.
Yeah. I just before this, I was dumping lots of soil and stuff out back.
And you're a bit of a bread baker as well, I hear.
Yeah, I love to bake bread.
Yeah.
But I think, if I were going to do something, I would like another artistic pursuit. Like if I suddenly couldn't play, I would start to write.
Okay. Would you write fiction or prose, short stories, bit of everything?
Prose.
Is there any knocking about? Is there any Gary Schocker prose knocking about that we don't know about?
Well, I mean, not really.
Okay.
I think it'd be fun to try to figure that out. And the more I watch, when I use my elliptical machine downstairs, I watch Netflix.
Yeah.
And I've watched so many series now that I can pretty much predict what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I'm just generally, and I enjoy watching how people. I've been watching The Lying Life of Adults. Have you seen that?
I haven't, no.
It's based on the Elena Ferrante novel, and it's just amazing. The acting is so beautiful, but then the way it's shot, the ideas are all there, but they're not so obvious.
Okay, is it on? Is that a Netflix series or is that?
Yeah, it's on Netflix. I just love it, and it's in Italian, so I can practice my Italian.
You speak a bit of Italian, do you as well?
A little bit, yeah.
Cool, there you are. Well, I've learned a lot, Gary. I would go on for another 2 hours here happily, but I need to keep this under an hour roughly.
Okay. Well, it was really nice talking to you.
It was an unbelievable pleasure.
Shall I say it's been nice talking at you? But
absolutely not.
Okay.
Here, I've got a Beatles concert in this. I am delighted. I'm going to edit that out just for me. That's for my evening.
Okay, nice.
Gary, thank you so much. I'm going to hit stop record here and then I'll chat to you afterwards. But thank you so much. I really hope that we will get another chance to do this again sometime. Maybe this will be
in a different season.
I noticed that as well. Yeah, are you a Halloween man? Are you buzzing for it?
My friend Susan sent me two. This is the exterior pumpkin color, and she sent me the interior pumpkin color as well.
Ah, wow!
Which is closer to the wall color.
It's nice to have friends in high places, isn't it? Well, thank you very much, Gary. I'm going to hit stop now, and we'll have a little chat. We'll just say goodbye to everybody then, and cheers everybody for tuning in. I hope you all enjoyed that as much as we did. Cheerio.
Bye.